Forbidden Memories, the first Yu-Gi-Oh game released overseas, and without question the hardest game in the classic games lineup for Yu-Gi-Oh. This particular game's difficulty is well known both within the Yu-Gi-Oh community and within the wider video game space, primarily thanks to the fact that it contains some of the most unfair fights in gaming that must be done in succession with no breaks in between, with the smallest of rewards for finishing them being a single card drop. Speedruns of this game are known as the most absurd roulette wheel of RNG in the world, with only one card dropping per fight, with odds for some being as low as 0.1% in a specific rank category. For me, those odds are just too insane for me to take a chance on the speedrun without allocating entire days to it. So what if I told you there was a more sanity-safe way to speedrun the game? In the speedrun community for Forbidden Memories, there's a mod that's become popular for category extension runs known as the 15 card mod, which replaces the single card drop of your normal runs with a full pack of 15, meaning that grinding time gets cut down by at most 93%, which makes this roulette wheel of a run manageable, but still have the chance for RNG to absolutely drive a runner to madness with enough wrong spins in a row. But a 93% time commitment cut? How could I say no? This is the story of my first ever speedrun of Forbidden Memories with the 15 card mod active, and if you like this video, consider subscribing for future videos. I hope you enjoy. Also, full disclosure, this run was actually done in October of last year. I don't do good with getting things done in a timely manner when it comes to my videos. Our run starts like many Forbidden Memories runs start, by resetting a bunch of times to get a half-decent starter deck. While most of the starting decks in Memories are completely random within the lower power pool of monsters, there are a few consistency pieces included in every starter deck, being a removal spell, a field spell, and an equip spell. The removal spell will always be either Raigeki or Dark Hole, of which Raigeki is clearly the superior spell, as it only wipes your opponent's monsters instead of wiping your own, leaving card 1 at a 50-50. The field spell can be the spell for any one of the 6 field types in the game, being Forest, Wasteland, Mountain, Sogen, Umi, and Yami, each giving their own buffs and debuffs to specific monster types. Because of the nature of a run, you standardly want to get a starting field spell that is going to line up with your strategy in the late game based on what monsters you're going to be using. Standardly for most runs of the game, you'll be building yourself the end boss of Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, as it's the most reliably powerful fusion in the mid to late game. So naturally, you're going to want to go with either Mountain or Umi for these starting choices, being the two that buff Twin, with Umi being the preferred option for late game due to final bosses also using powerful dragons, making this a 33% chance roll. Finally is the equip spell, which gives an appropriate monster a boost of 500 attack and defense when used on them, with there being 28 different possible options. Similarly to the field spell, we're going to want an equip spell that can latch onto Twin, which reduces the 28 possible options to 5. Beast Fangs, Dark Energy, Dragon Treasure, Horn of Light, and Invigoration, making this roll the hardest at a 17.8% chance of a good equip spell. That means for us to get an ideal starting roll, we'll have to hit odds on all 3, giving us roughly a 3% chance to see all 3 line up in a starting deck before we even get to move into the monsters. For the monsters, you'll get a set of 37 at almost complete random, receiving 16 whose attack and defense total under 1100, 16 that are between 1100 and 16, 4 between 16 and 21, and 1 whose total is over 21, with no singular stat going over 1600 attack in the case of Beautiful Headhuntress, or 1800 defense in the case of Dragon Piper. While the monster lineup does not matter nearly as much as the previous spells do, it is decently important to try and ensure good fusion materials for the early game, primarily in beasts, dragons, females, plants, rocks, and thunders, with dragons and thunders being pickups for the late game and all others being early to mid. Again though, they are completely random and you will get a lot of monster drops as the run continues, so they're not as important to get right as the spells are, so it is okay to take a subpar monster pool compared to a subpar spell line. So starting for the day, I was already a little impatient, having started the stream later than I had wanted, and after restarting the run 10 times to get a good starting deck, I found a decent one. Alright, there's a dragon, a mountain, and a Raigeki. Okay, I know we don't have a thunder, but this is too good to pass up. Not ideal by any stretch of the imagination, but it was gonna have to do for now. Little did I know at the time, but my stubbornness to not go for a decent equip spell here would spell disastrous later. With our starter deck in tow, we immediately run back to our room in the palace before it's stormed by the High Priest Haitian and his right hand Seto, with Haitian forcing us to duel him. We have absolutely no chance at beating him here, which is the point, as it's the only duel in the entire game we're allowed to lose without getting a game over, so we quickly summon weak monsters and attack into him to progress the story, getting a solid first cycle Haitian and moving into World Tournament with a split at 335. In the modern day, we come to our first actual opponent, Rex Raptor, who wasn't ready for our starting deck actually having a decent number of female monsters, giving us early access to some of the best early game fusions. Females are some of the most versatile monsters in the early game, as they can form powerful fusions with plants, fairies, beasts, and rocks, with any of these being able to win the early fights with no real issue. With an early Queen of Autumn Leaves, we make quick work of Rex, claiming our first A-PAL finish. When rolling for drops, there are 3 separate drop pools based on what ranking you finish at, being SA PAL, which are for quick monster heavy matches, SA Tech for long all resource type used matches, and BCD PAL Tech, which is everything in between. For Rex specifically, the SA PAL pool is the best pool for the early game because of the inclusion of Crawling Dragon number 2 at a 3.5% drop rate, which is one of the higher drop rates in the pool that we're going to be fishing in, along with other desired cards like Oslo Hero number 2, Dragon Zombie, Wicked Dragon with Urzot's Head, and Mountain. Thankfully, off of this first SA PAL, we nabbed a Crawling Dragon number 2, which is going to make our fusions a whole lot easier once we start converting to the Dragon pool. From here, we detour for a moment to grind Duel Master Cave and Rex for parts, finding another Crawling Dragon number 2, Dragon Zombie, Wicked Dragon, Mountain, and Beast Fangs from our 4 passes. Nice. From here, we quickly move through Weevil, Mai, Keith, and Shoddy, slotting in a couple of better fusion targets and generically stronger monsters as we go, importantly grabbing an Immortal of Thunder off of Keith, before moving into grinding Shoddy for parts. Shoddy has a few interesting drops to help boost our deck at this stage, with SA PAL dropping us a couple of Thunders and Umi at the lower odds, and BCD rank giving us better odds on those in addition to Invigoration and Raigeki odds, meaning we're aiming for the BCD ranks, with no good drops on 2 passes. Luckily, we've earned enough star chips to unlock a new card for decks at least. Star chips are a currency provided by performing well in duels, awarding 5 for an S rank all the way down to 1 for a D rank, which can be cashed in at the password screen using a card's 8-digit passcode to unlock them, with weaker monsters costing lower counts of star chips like our redeem for Lala Leon at 30, going all the way up to the maximum star chip cost of 99,999 for cards you shouldn't reasonably have. Thankfully, we can make up for some unlucky drops here by purchasing Thunders throughout the run to help bulk out our lines. At this point, you're probably wondering how the Thunders mix into all of this. As previously stated, our end goal fusion is Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, which requires a fusion of a dragon and a thunder with at least one piece being 1600 attack or higher. Because of this, Thunders are the most important part we're going to need to unlock throughout the run, as dragons can drop from almost anyone in the BCD ranks while Thunders are a little harder to come by. Because of this, we'll be offsetting this by spending star chips throughout the run to buff out our thunder count, with this purchase of Lala Leon giving us our second, allowing us to continue on to fighting Bakura. Bakura is the first opponent so far that could be considered more difficult for us thanks to his monsters having rather high defenses, with them capping out with Millennium Shield at 3000, meaning we now need monsters that can get over it. Thankfully, with 5 dragons and 2 thunders, alongside our 2 field spells and 1 equipped spell, we now have odds to summon a buffed Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon to clear it, although they're still notably lower odds, clearing Bakura on the first try and grabbing 3 Goddess of the Third Eye from the single pass, being a female for making our mid-range fusions. Next up is Pegasus, who represents a substantially harder challenge. Not only can he summon higher power monsters that can actually attack thanks to Brickery Box and Bright Castle, bringing his max attack up to 2800, but he can also cheat, using the Millennium Eye to see our face down monsters and never taking a bad attack into a mystery monster. He also has very low odds to start the duel with Meteor Black Dragon at 3500 attack, which is completely unbeatable for our current deck. Thanks to these factors and our deck still not being quite up to par, we come to our first wipe of the run. Then our second just 3 minutes later. But us and our stubbornness, we just try again, and 5 minutes later we finally claim our victory over Pegasus, claiming 2 more dragons and our first big grinding opponent, but more on that later. With the new dragons in tow, we decide to take on Isis right away after, taking her down on the first try and getting our first major stroke of good luck.
Widespread! Spread on the first freaking try!
Hitting a BCD on Isis in the story fight gave us a roll at her drop pool early, claiming a copy of Baby Dragon, Yamatano Dragon Scroll, and most importantly, Widespread Ruin, a trap that destroys any attacking monster all off of a single roll. Claiming a Widespread so quickly is important because this unlocks the ability for us to finally hit the hardest unlock pool of SA Tech, as now we can actually use a trap. Riding high on our lucky drop, we go straight into the Kaiba fight and wipe again. Recognizing that our deck is probably not consistent enough to take on Kaiba, we decide to detour for now and return to Pegasus for the SA Tech grind. The SA Tech pool for Pegasus in particular is extremely important, as his pool here is chock full of great drops for us, from various dragons and thunders to equip and field spells, as well as two extremely important drops for the late game, Dragon Capture Jar and Megamorph. Dragon Capture Jar is particularly powerful against the last 3 bosses of the game, as they heavily rely on the power of strong dragon drops to overpower you, giving you effectively more copies of Raigeki for the late game. Megamorph, however, is the far more important drop here, as it's useful from the moment you obtain it, being the best equipped spell in the game, boosting any monster by 1000 attack and defense. With such a powerful drop pool, Pegasus is the best target for us to go for these late game drops, which is going to require us to get that SA Tech rank repeatedly. To get it, we're going to need to fill out a couple of requirements. Firstly, we need to use at least 37 cards of our 40 card deck. That means once we hit that requirement, we have to end the game immediately, because if we don't, we'll deck out the following turn and lose. Secondly, we need to end the duel with our life point count being under 1000. This would prove to be the most difficult of the conditions for us to hit consistently, as many times when we would get close, Pegasus would hit us with just slightly too much power for us to handle and we'd lose the old-fashioned way. Thirdly, we need to achieve as many spells, equips, trap activations, and fusions as possible, as well as many effective attacks as possible, which means to attack over an attack mode monster and win, as all of these will boost our rank for this. Another factor here would be defensive wins, where the opponent attacks your defense mode monster and fails to destroy it, but against Pegasus, it's a moot point since he will never attack a face down monster he can't beat thanks to his aforementioned ability to cheat. With that in mind, we have a few ways we can manipulate the AI to our advantage to control as many factors as possible. Pegasus's deck is chock full of monsters, spells, and traps, but there is a way you can manipulate what he'll play. As long as you control a monster and he doesn't, Pegasus will always play a monster if he is able to, meaning that by clearing his field every turn, you can prevent him from activating his power spells and traps, like Raigeki and Feather Duster. With this in mind, we do our best each turn to manage how many spells, equips, and traps we've used, clearing his board every time, and summoning weaker and weaker monsters for him to attack and give us opportunities to both trigger widespreads or lower our own life points. After 8 minutes, we finally get our first A-Tech, pulling a One-Eyed Shield Dragon and Umi, but unfortunately none of what we were actively looking for. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the case for the next few attempts, with 2 losses and a BCD done out of mental zone out. But we finally get another A-Tech a solid 30 minutes later, claiming a second widespread, 2 Dragon Capture Jars, and a Megamorph, calling it quits on Pegasus's grind with our new treasures in tow. With these new power cards, we quickly add them to our deck and head back to Kaiba, beating him just 5 minutes later and officially wrapping the World Tournament section of the run. As we return back to ancient Egypt, we have a couple of story beats to run through, including quickly beating a laughably easy opponent in the Mage Soldier so that we can unlock the fights against the 5 High Priests. At which point we will go to the Meadow Mage, beat him quickly, and back out to the grinding menu again. This is done so that we can unlock Meadow Mage in the free duel menu, as his particular drops are going to be critical for our final deck, with his SA PAL pool including cards like Dark Magician, Curse of Dragon, Crawling Dragon, Metal Dragon, Kaminari Attack, Skull Knight, Meteor Dragon, and the coveted Meteor Black Dragon, the most powerful non-fusion drop we will have access to in the entire run. And after 30 minutes of grinding with our sanity slowly dying, we finally have a deck we can be confident with going into the High Priest Gauntlet, with 3 Meteor Black Dragon, 13 Dragons, 8 Thunders, 2 Equips, 3 Field Spells, and 2 Widespreads. It only takes us 4 minutes to take down the Ocean Mages, 3 for the Mountains, and 5 for the Deserts, which leads us into the setup for the end game. For runs of the game, you have 2 choices when it comes to the final Gauntlet, with just doing 5 Mage sets and shotgunning the end game giving you the final 7 Gauntlet, being 7 difficult bosses in a row, or by taking a detour halfway through the Mage grind you can fight Labyrinth Mage in Seto 2, which will take a fight off of the end Gauntlet, known as Final 6. Because this was our first time running the game, we wanted to preserve our sanity as much as possible, and as such, we decided we would be doing Final 6 setup so that we could save ourselves the pain later on. Unfortunately, while our deck was solidly cracked for the mage fights, we were sorely underprepared for Labyrinth and Seto 2, wiping on Seto on our first attempt, and Labyrinth on our second. The issue stood in our equipped spell lineup, as only 2 spells for buffing on short notice was proving to be insufficient, effectively punishing us for neglecting our starting equipped spell at the start of the run. Because of this, we made a conscious decision to pause the Final 6 prep and detour back to an old friend. Okay, guys, I've come to the realization of what we actually probably need to do. We have to do another SA Tech on Pegasus. This is going to suck. Because we were returning to Pegasus long after our deck's power had spiked, the grind was far more painful than previously, as now the life point count was far more difficult to manipulate as our weaker monsters were fewer and farther between. And after almost an hour of grinding, bouncing between Pegasus, Isis, and Rex to potentially get any single equip spell to help us move on, we got fed up with it and just challenged Seto 2 again. On the second try, we at least got it and decided to move on to the remaining mages, clearing both Forest Mages and Meadow Mages on the first attempt each, hitting an easy mode luckily on both, leaving only the final gauntlet to go. Starting our final 6 attempt, Sebek and Neku would fall with absolutely no issue, as to be expected. We also managed a swift 2 minutes on Haishin, leading us into Seto's betrayal and the hardest boss of the game, Seto 3, who wiped us in 3 minutes. So we give it another go, clearing Sebek and Neku, only to wipe the Haishin this time. With our pride in absolute shambles, we crawl back over to the free duel menu to grind out some kind of equip spells to use from Pegasus, who was even harder to do now thanks to our stubbornness making the deck too strong to reliably lose life points with. Luckily, Pegasus was merciful on us this time, giving us both a second Megamorph and a third Widespread after only one attempt 10 minutes later. With new tools in hand, we return to the final 6 for our third attempt, once again clearing Sebek and Neku with no issues, pulling a shockingly fast and easy win on Haishin, only to wipe to Seto 3 yet again. At this stage, we were getting frustrated. It was either keep trying final 6 until we got lucky draws against Seto 3, or spend another hour grinding for equip spells to make it easier. In my continued stubbornness, we attempted the final 6 yet again, dropping to 750 life against Haishin. With an open board, we await for him to end it yet again, when...
Unless, for some ungodly reason, he sets a spell or trap this turn.
Wait! He sets a card. This is our chance. We quickly fuse together a twin to get up our advantage, but stupidly attack into a Widespread. It's over.
Nope, I lost because of that. Okay, well... Wait, he went into defense mode. Why is he playing like this? He's playing awful.
An absolute godsend, with Haishin not recognizing the lethal attack he had available. We quickly fuse another twin and hold the fort as Haishin sets another back row and passes. At this point, we're back in the game. Over the following turns, we take our time setting up a wall of traps with Widespreads, testing back row for traps with baiting attacks, and slowly but surely, we claw our way back into the game, taking down Haishin with just one card left in our deck, and shockingly, earning us an A-Tech ranking.
I got an A-Tech against the guy. Wait a minute, I just got an A-Tech against Haishin. I may have just gotten another equip spell.
My realization would be correct, as Haishin wouldn't just give me an equip spell.
We didn't just get an equip spell, guys. He gave us Dark Hole. He gave us Dark Hole. He gave us Dark Hole.
This was it. This had to be it. Haishin had given us an absolute blessing going into Seto 3 by giving us both 2 more equip spells and 2 more board clears, giving us 5 and 6 of each respectively going into Seto 3. We adjusted our deck accordingly and made peace with what was coming. We needed a good roll, as Seto 3 isn't just notoriously difficult, he straight up cheats. While the game shows he only has 5 cards in his hand, in reality, he has 20, meaning that in order for us to beat him, we need to be able to match the power of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon repeatedly or draw multiple ways to out it. The game starts and we see a path, a line to a buff twin and dragon capture jar. We set the DCJ in anticipation for the Ultimate Dragon, and we get hit with Feather Duster. We need another answer to Ultimate now before we can continue. Widespread, exactly what we needed. We set it in anticipation. Another Feather Duster. We need yet another clear card to remain in the game. Another DCJ off the top. We set it and we prepare ourselves, as there's no way Seto isn't going to make a push here.
Okay, he's finally out of Dusters. It's Blue Eyes Ultimate. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. Oh my god. Guys, this is it. This is the run. This is the run!
It all comes down to his next play. He plays a monster face down and passes, notably with a moon star sign. This clues us in that it's not another ultimate, and we are now 2 swings away from lethal.
He got him. And you know it's not over yet.
No, it's not over, and even though Seto 3 is the hardest boss in the game, he isn't the last, as we still have 2 more fights to go. Dark Knight is another powerful duelist, but in terms of raw power, he's a step down from Seto 3, with his strongest raw monster being MBD at 3500, but he still has plenty of cards that can make the fight hell, such as Megamorph, Raigeki, and Crush card. Luckily, he summons Blue Eyes as his big threat, and we roll in easy mode from then on, powering up a Dark Magician and cleaning the game up. All that's left now is Nightmare, the final boss. Nightmare is unique in that the only thing he can play are monsters, with no spells or traps in his deck. That being said, he also has access to Blue Eyes Ultimate, so it's not like he's a cakewalk. It's all gonna come down to our opening draw. Will we find something that can face Ultimate?
At it. We win. We actually just straight up win. The big thing about Nightmare is he only plays monsters. We just got a monster bigger than anything he can summon. We won. This is it. This is the end of the run.
We open MBD with 2 Megamorph, making a 5500 attack monster stronger than literally anything Nightmare can play, meaning that it is as simple as just cleaning up the game from there, taking only 3 turns to do so.
Time. Oh. Oh. Sub 5 hours.
And just like that, we completed our first ever Forbidden Memories run just shy of 5 hours, receiving the wonderful reward of that end credits music. With a time claiming 195th place at the time, it's a solid time for a first ever run of the game. Was it brutal? Absolutely. Would I do it again? I already have. Honestly, I made so many mistakes throughout this run, which is unsurprising for my first run of the game, but since then I've improved significantly on my pathing, grinding habits, and general game knowledge to where now I can manage runs faster than before, with my current top run sitting at 1 hour and 51 minutes, which has me placed just outside of the top 100, but the fact that I've managed a sub 2 hour run is impressive enough for me. If you're interested in seeing these runs, come stop by my Twitch streams whenever they happen, or check out the VOD channel in the description.
A huge shout out to my patrons Dammit Marco, Jukes, NTB Yugioh, Otaku GamerX, and Prinrin, as well as all of my other patrons over on Patreon for helping support me to experiment with these different forms of content and to help keep things fresh. If you enjoyed it, consider backing me on Patreon, where support tiers start at as little as $1 a month. These contributions help me to create more experimental content like this video, and every little bit helps. Thank you all again, and I'll see you next time.